Hello again, everyone. This is another installment of MustardHub Voices Behind the Build. In these episodes, I sit down with the people building, backing, and running better workplaces. I'm your host, Curtis Forbes, and my guest today is Todd Hurst. Todd is head of ACA Sales at Equifax Workforce Solutions, bringing more than 20 years' experience in the healthcare industry. And over the course of his career, Todd has held roles spanning benefits administration, product development, sales, project and account management. His passion is helping clients save time managing their workforce against ACA regulations while driving meaningful risk mitigation. Welcome to Behind the Build. Thanks for joining me, Todd.
Thanks for having me, Curtis. That's a very exciting introduction, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. Hearing yourself back always makes it, when I hear myself, I'm like, really? Yeah, I guess I did do all those things. That's kind of a little insane. And yet I still have imposter syndrome like everyone else. So,
But it happens.
One thing you did not list in there, and this is important to me, so we're going to jump into it right away. You also play music. Tell me what you play. Tell me about your gigs over the weekend. I'm going to live vicariously through you right now before we jump into all the hard stuff.
Sure. Sounds good. Yes. I play guitar and I sing, and mostly kind of, I guess, market myself as more of a country musician, but love all kinds of music. So generally am playing little breweries or bars where we're playing a little bit of country and a little bit of rock and roll, as cliche as that sounds. Okay. But I've been doing that now for, I think, pretty consistently I think I'm going on 12 to 13, 14 years now.
Nice.
Where, just, maybe 2-3 times a month, nothing crazy, just get away and go play some music.
Is this an Equifax family band, or is this outside?
This is outside of Equifax. Yeah, this is not like a Partridge Family reboot or anything like that. This is just me and some, a buddy or two that we like to play, and it's just fun to get away and do something different. So yeah.
I love
and the weekend was good. We had I didn't double book, but we had 2 shows on Saturday. And so that's when you really get that rush where like you finish the first show and then you got to pack up real quick and head down the road to the next show and get ready for that. But it was fun.
It's exhausting. I love that. A little country and a little rock and roll. I grew up out in West Texas, so I feel my personality is a little bit country and a little bit rock and roll. And yet I spent 15 years playing jazz. So I cannot figure out where that all came from. But very cool. You've spent more than 2 decades in the healthcare industry across, all these things that we mentioned, benefits admin, product development, sales, account management. It's a really broad range. So
it is.
Give me the timeline. How did you end up in this space, and ultimately what kept you here?
Sure. I guess for the past 20 plus years, I've kind of been in the mindset of, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, which has kind of led me across all these roles. But really where it first started was I had moved, I'm in Minnesota, and I'd moved here. And as I was preparing to move here in 2005, was looking for a job out of college and landed on through a referral from someone, landed at a third-party administrator for benefits. And that's kind of what got me into healthcare. I didn't go to school for it. I went to school for computer programming and just kind of landed into this role where I started to realize that healthcare is pretty cool. And the way that it works, it's not everyone's favorite. It's not everyone's cup of tea. There are challenges with the industry, but it's cool in the sense of you have decisions being made, or, an employee elects their benefits. And then there's so much stuff that goes on behind the scenes to make sure that they're covered, that their dependents are covered, that there's compliance for the employer, for the employee, and all the billing processes that happen. So, not everybody's favorite topic at family dinner or at the holidays, but it's just very interesting how everything goes and operates around it. So that's kind of what caught my attention. And then from there, I kind of realized like this is a space to be in because you can make a difference. You can make a change no matter where you are, right? So there's the obvious changes of doctor, nurse, et cetera, of being like boots on the ground. But then there's also the behind the scenes where you can help an employer help their employees or help the employer, become more efficient, save money, and make things a little bit cost friendly.
Yeah, it is a very complicated ecosystem of participants, and
Yes.
right, all cogs in the wheel, right, all have to be moving in order for sort of just the greater ecosystem to be functioning the way it's designed to function. And I certainly don't position myself as somebody who understands how that ecosystem works, at least how it works well. But I'm really kind of curious, because you described a little bit about this, and are there parts of it that you find more fascinating than others? Like when you had mentioned that when you understood it and you learned about it, you realized, well, this is a place to be in because I could make a difference. Which of those parts of this greater ecosystem, I think, was most impactful for you?
Yeah. I've never fully thought of that, but I think what first comes to mind is where you can help, again, that employer or the employee, depending on where you're focused within your role, you can help them become better at what they're trying to accomplish within the healthcare practice. So, what are they trying to improve within their HR teams or within their messaging to the employees, or as an employee, what are you trying to improve within your life to just make it easier? And so, what's really drawn me to not only my current role but some of my previous roles is that impact of, for example, building a tool, a decision-making tool for employees that have back pain and they don't know what to do. So how severe is the back pain? What have you done? Have you taken Advil? How long have you been taking Advil? Based on those responses, here's what your next steps look like. So being a part of that was pretty cool. And then the work I'm doing now is from an employer standpoint, how can we help the employer navigate complex regulations with so many offerings out there to make sure that the employer is compliant while also ensuring that the employee is getting affordable healthcare coverage to take care of themselves and their family. So I think it's having that impact kind of behind the scenes that really drives me and motivates me to the roles.
I feel like most people land in sales like one of two ways, right? They either like find something that they really, really believe in, or they find a problem that they can't ignore.
Mhm.
And I'm curious, maybe not everybody would agree with that particular, how I've, I guess, simplified it like that. But like, I'm just kind of curious, was it one of those things for you?
Um, well, you mentioned imposter syndrome earlier. And this is where that comes in for me. I'm not classically trained in sales, as I like to say.
Yeah.
Um, I landed in sales, I think probably because I was pretty passionate and very passionate about a product that we were offering. And I would go on sales calls and kind of act as okay, once the sales process is done, you're then going to work with Todd's team and they're going to help you implement the platform and guide you along the way over the next 1, 3, 5, 10 years as you're using it. And someone came up to me and said, you know a lot about the product, you're passionate about it, you can really bring it to the market. I want to move you from client management over into sales. And that's kind of how I landed. And then here I am several years later. I think it's been that passion for what we're offering to the clients that just, it motivates me every day to motivate my team and to get better at what we're doing to sell our product and get it into the client's hands so that their lives can be easier.
I love that. Yeah. So now you're leading ACA
Yeah.
sales at Equifax Workforce Solutions, right? So
Yeah.
so let's make sure everybody, knows, right? For those who aren't familiar, what does Equifax Workforce Solutions actually do, right?
Mhm.
And then where does ACA sort of fit into that picture?
Yeah, that's the number one question I get asked every time I go somewhere
Good. So
and
you're
someone
ready for
says,
it.
yeah, someone says, "Who do you work for?" And I say, "Equifax." And they go, "Fix my credit."
Yeah.
And my cheeky response is always, "Only you can fix your credit score." But the reality is everyone knows Equifax from the credit bureau, and we're much more than that. And so, what Equifax Workforce Solutions is we are really there to support employers on three levels of their employees: onboarding, and then those that are active employments or employees, and then the offboarding. So we focus on, for example, I-9s, making sure I-9s are accurate and compliant and complete to help employers reduce the amount or the risk with I-9s. And then on the back end, for example, we manage unemployment claims. And in the middle is where I sit. So from an Affordable Care Act standpoint, we partner with employers to help their active employees. And we have a couple other products that fall in there, but the ACA is really there to help the employers manage the regulatory piece of the Affordable Care Act, the employer mandate side of it, to make sure that they're measuring their employees' hours, offering them benefits when they're required by the regulation, and then mitigating that risk throughout the year and at the end of the year as they have to do all of their tax filings. So a lot of times I say Affordable Care Act or ACA. Someone says, I don't know what that is. I reference Obamacare. Sometimes they know then, or I'll have to reference 1095, 1094 forms. And that's when the light bulb goes off and they realize kind of
That's
how
when
we
the light
support
when
them.
you reference the form is when the light bulb goes
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's when I know that maybe the person I'm talking to might need a little bit more education on what the ACA is, because it's so much more than just those forms that show up
Yeah.
at the end of the year. And that's what a lot of people don't realize about it, is that it goes much deeper than that.
Let's talk about that. I mean, for
Sure.
for any of those who might be kind of fuzzy on it, like what is ACA? Why is it such a heavy lift for employers like more than a decade after it was signed into law?
Yeah. That's a great way to put it, is a heavy lift after being around for 10 years, right? So what what employers need to know is really that the ACA is really focused on getting employees that generally do not get offered benefits, making sure that they're offered benefits that cover certain levels of care, right? So you have to meet regulations on what plan you're offering. They have to be affordable, or else that employee can go out to the federal marketplace. So, why does the employer care? And why is it still, again, that heavy lift now? It can be a very manual process, and it
Mhm.
can still be very complex, especially if you have a workforce that is variable, a lot of part-time people, that restaurant retail, for example, right? If you've got people that maybe one week they work 40 hours and the next they work 25, how does that, you have to do those calculations. So you need to have a way and a process and a tool to make sure that you're monitoring those employees so that when they become eligible, you're offering them those benefits. And I think that's the heavy lift to it. And then, of course, the other pieces throughout the year, you want to be managing that, the offerings and also the compliance aspect of it, so that at the end of the year, when you're dealing with W-2s for tax season, right, and moving into a new
Mhm.
calendar year, and all the changes that come with that and benefits, you don't have to sit there and spend hours upon hours looking at those 1095 forms that I talked about earlier, making sure that they're accurate. And what it all boils down to is the IRS has the ability to penalize employers that are not managing their ACA regulations accurately or completely. And you don't want the IRS to kind of get your name, so to speak, and have you on their radar. So that's where we come in and help out. We want to help the employer make sure they're compliant, which downstream also helps the employee get affordable benefits and make sure that they're covered in the healthcare space.
When when a company like comes to you and says that managing this compliance is is a headache, what practically speaking, right? What does that headache usually look like? Is it a voluminous amount of paperwork? Is it like you were talking about this sort of frontline or hourly workforce that may fluctuate, right, in hours that can ultimately influence eligibility? What are the things that you see people are struggling with the most?
Yeah. It's paperwork, essentially.
Yeah. Okay.
That's kind of what it boils down to. And what we see is the HR teams, we all know HR teams have a lot going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're not just focused on benefits, they're, or at least medical benefits, right? You've got dental, vision, 401k,
Yeah.
you've got leave of absences that you have to manage. And HR teams are generally pretty small. So what we see, and even with large organizations and down to like mom and pop shops, the HR teams become inundated with going, okay, Todd was hired on X date. We have to offer him benefits here. Oh no, wait, he left. Now he's come back. Do we have to offer him benefits? What do we do? Or we hired him part time. Now he wants to move full time. How do we manage that? He's gone on leave of absence. How do we manage that piece? How does this all relate to when we need to offer him benefits and what benefits we need to offer him? And I think that's what really takes up a lot of HR time. And what we hear a lot is, I just don't want to deal with this anymore, even 10 years later.
Can
Like
imagine.
some folks will go, we understand it, we know how it should work, I just don't want to deal with it. And that leads to a lot of where we come in to support. We have a great team that works with our clients on a pretty much monthly basis, sometimes more, sometimes less, to kind of keep them on track, make sure they're doing what they need to do, and make sure they're compliant and ready for the end of the year. But then also it's that really that end of the year piece. If you think of the tax season for employers, W-2s have to be out by January 31st. These 1095 forms have to be out by March 2nd, generally speaking, depending on what day of the month or of the week that falls. But then as you kind of take it back a little bit, a 1/1 calendar year employer, so someone where everyone's in open enrollment for benefits starting January 1st, they're dealing with that in July. So they've got July through October where they're getting ready for open enrollment. Open enrollment happens in October, November. Then you have Thanksgiving. Then you have Christmas. And we all know what we're doing in December. We're either kind of picking up the pieces from open enrollment if we're in HR, and then we're dealing with Christmas, kind of. But really, everyone's dealing with Christmas and the New Year. And then next thing you know, it's January 5th. And someone goes, oh, hey, by the way, now you have to have all these forms out on time. They have to be compliant. They have to be accurate. And so when you kind of look at it in that lens, employers, they just don't have time. They don't have patience, and they want someone else to do with it or deal with it. It's better for them to just have an expert go, trust us.
Yeah.
We've got it. You can focus on something else.
Does this problem like scale with company size, or do you feel like the smaller mid-sized businesses with a smaller HR bench are the ones that are carrying like a disproportionate burden?
Yeah. I would say that the smaller mid-market, kind of middle-sized employers generally have 1, 2, 3 people in their HR team trying to do everything.
Yeah.
So they are faced with more challenges. The larger corporations, larger companies, larger HR team, maybe someone that's more focused on benefits.
Yeah.
But even then, those benefits teams are dealing with medical, dental, vision, leave of absence. Even if they just focus on that, they might be getting phone calls nonstop from employees asking questions, or they have other things to deal with. So I think at the end of the day, it all kind of levels out in regards to the amount of work people do. But the smaller middle sized employers are definitely hit harder with it.
I think that, and all those things that you described, like all of the things that they have to think about, and all those timelines, and all the deadlines, and all the paperwork, all those things are hard enough to handle. And that's assuming they do it all right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so you see where I'm kind of actually going to go with this now is I'm really kind of curious, like, what are like the most common compliance mistakes that they're making? Like, how often are those mistakes things that they don't even know they're doing wrong, right? And
Yeah.
then how easy is it to just, call it a mulligan and easily do it do it over?
Yeah. Well, I think the common mistake is just making sure. So within the Affordable Care Act regulations, you've got this 1095 form. It's got these codes on it.
Yeah.
So, I think we've all looked at the form at least once over the last 10 years if we've received one. And these codes tell a story. So my form tells a story of what did the employer offer me? Did they offer me benefits or not?
Okay.
And then did I enroll in them or not? And if I didn't, was it affordable? And so the employer has to make sure that those codes each month. So you got 12 months worth of codes on this form.
Oh, okay.
Employer has to make sure that that is accurate and telling the right story. I think that's the biggest concern right out of the gate for employers is how do I make sure that I'm a 500 life employer? How do I make sure all 500 forms are correct and accurate and complete? Now I'm a 500,000 life employer. How am I making sure all of my forms are accurate and complete? I think that's what keeps people up at night the most and where the most time burden comes in. If they get it wrong, if something's incomplete, I think that there is a pretty decent chance of a mulligan.
Okay.
Kind of, you do get it. You do get the opportunity. So there is a requirement that all this data has to go to the IRS every year, and you are able to correct forms or correct some of the data as you realize, like, oh, this form should have said XYZ and it says ABC, so let's fix it. We'll send it back to the IRS. And then the IRS goes through and audits all of this every year. And with some of the things that have happened over the last several years, the IRS is behind on doing these audits. So right now, they're in calendar year tax filings for 2023, which were filed in calendar year 2024. Yeah. So as you're an employer, you might not have realized you did anything wrong or inaccurate. I don't want to say wrong, but inaccurate. And you're sitting here, it's 2026, you're going, we're good. And all of a sudden you get a letter from the IRS that says, actually, you weren't. And so that's where it pays to have that confidence that you know that everything's right out of the gate so that 3 years later, you don't get a letter from the IRS. Now, generally, the IRS is going to give you time to review it, to kind of give you a response, to potentially correct it. But there is, there was legislation passed that kind of removed that, we'll call it grace period, back in 2021. So the IRS is cracking down a little bit, but there is still that chance to kind of raise your hand and go, sorry, it won't happen again. And the IRS will generally go, okay, we'll give you one more shot.
Something I hear in a lot of conversations, whether we're talking about, benefits, culture, legacy processes, right? A lot of organizations, even when they know things aren't working, they just kind of stick to this familiar, thing, the familiar process, right? That they know, right? Anyways. And so I'm curious, why is it so hard for a lot of orgs to like let go of a manual or a legacy process, right? Even when it's clearly creating more work. And like when you're in conversations with a leader who's maybe resistant to change, like how do you get past the like we've always done it this way, wall? What actually moves them?
Oh, isn't that the $1 million question, right? I always talk about
story. Can you tell a story about? I mean, you don't have to name any names here. I'm just kind of curious about like when I would imagine you work with some larger clients. When they finally like you help them see the aha moment, they make a huge shift, and now there's like an enormous difference, right? We talked about making the impact, right?
Yeah, Absolutely. We've had a couple. Well, we've had several clients. I'd say more than just a couple, where we've been able to show them the value of let us do it. It's a small price to let us do it. You've got the expertise. We'll support you. You'll know that all the boxes are getting checked, right? Go do something else. Go enjoy that weekend in January where you normally spend 20 to 30 hours
Yeah.
auditing data. Uh, just have that weekend off. And it does take a little bit. And generally, the person that's responsible for doing it is the one that doesn't want to do the change. They don't want to let go of it, and that's understandable because there's a greater fear that if I let this go, you know, what's my role here now? And it's always I always let my team know, and we've done this for a long time, to let them know it's not about replacing what they're doing in regards to kind of the day-to-day operations, but it's reducing the amount of time they're spending on it. They're still a part of the process. They still have to, review things and sign off on things, but we're just helping them get from point A to point B faster. And when you put it that way, I think everyone in leadership realizes it, and all the day-to-day folks realize that it would be nice to have that weekend off, or it would be nice to leave the office at 4 o'clock on a Friday or 3 o'clock on a Friday before filing season deadline instead of 6 p.m. So it's really all about making it about the betterment for the HR team and how it will make their lives easier. And we do that with, again, you don't have to work that weekend, or if you do this on your own, here's what your output is. Here's what our output is.
Yeah.
Let's compare notes and see where we can make you more efficient and more accurate.
I would also think like, the doomsday scenario, right, that you sort of brought up, with the IRS calling. I imagine that there's data out there to maybe show that these are common mistakes. It's happening this percentage of the time. It's costing organizations this amount per person. And so you can actually really quantify even the financial impact of working with an expert in this space to do it the way that you do it. Yeah, not necessarily a question, just sort of a thought in my mind. I am curious though. So one thing I like that, Equifax Workforce Solutions, right, positions itself as what is it? People driven, data powered.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of my favorite. I really like this because I actually feel like in a lot of ways it applies to what we do. So I'm very much a big fan of the tagline. But what does it mean in the context of like ACA and compliance work, right? What does data do for employers that the manual processes can't? Like, how do you use it?
Yeah, we use the data to help them understand really not only what their medical benefits, that's the main focus, right? It's not just what is the compliance for this year. It's also how can you as an employer improve in the future. So how can you look at your medical benefits as a true benefit to your employees and to your organization? So the data that we get from the employers helps us with keeping them compliant, making sure employees are offered benefits when they should be offered benefits. But it also helps us go, hey, you've got people enrolling in this plan more than this other plan over here that could reduce your cost as well as their costs. So maybe we should look at that and, talk internally about how you could maybe shift your employees to a different plan or a different coverage level, or make sure that they're seeing this offering or this benefit out there. And that's really kind of how I think we take the data and maybe flip it to, instead of being just compliance, we're also helping the employer improve their processes to help their employees kind of live a better life.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just operational efficiency; it's financial efficiency. I
Absolutely.
think also, um, which I mean is a big deal, right? We all want to be spending money more efficiently, right?
Yes, especially
When
in benefits. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Because I mean, people is always going to be the biggest cost center of any organization, right? And benefits are usually, I don't necessarily count them in pay, right? Payroll is always the biggest cost center. Benefits is not a far second, right? And
Mhm.
when it comes to ACA specifically, though, I mean, what are some downstream risks when the data is incomplete or inaccurate, right? Or if it's siloed across systems?
Yeah. Yeah, with the data, a lot of times it's going to be that doomsday issue
Oh
of a
yeah.
call from the IRS or a letter from the IRS. No one wants to receive that certified envelope. That is really where the importance of data accuracy comes into play in our space. That's going to allow the employer to stay off the radar, and it's going to help them also downstream to just be more efficient with the filings and the regulatory pieces every year to have that data accuracy and that complete data, making sure that it's all living in one space and that the checks and balances are in. And as this evolves, the Affordable Care Act, again, you've mentioned it's been around for 10 years. Haven't seen a lot of movement. There have been some changes here and there. We saw one of the bigger regulatory changes back in December of 2024. But then as this starts to evolve, as healthcare evolves, I think we're going to see more changes that having good data is going to become very key in the next probably 2 to 5 years.
Are there other ways that the data and tools that Equifax provides, give HR teams broader visibility into their workforce? Like things maybe leaders didn't expect when they came in for help with ACA, but now they're seeing, you know, other things.
Mhm.
Or is it solely focused, just on that one's really kind of specific area and category?
No, I think with the data that Equifax brings in general, we're able to again utilize that to help the employer with all aspects of the HR space. There's improving your onboarding practices and automating I-9 processes to where with our technology, someone can fill out their I-9 at a kiosk or electronically and just have a quick face-to-face meeting with someone and wrap up their I-9 process quickly. So the data has allowed us to work with employers to again ensure that how they're doing their practices is saving them time and money and making it a better experience for their employee, because as you mentioned, retention is key.
Yeah.
Right, making sure that your employees love what they do, but also that the stuff that they have to do on the side is not cumbersome and time consuming is key. So that's where we leverage the data to help the employers make it easier for the employee and bring that retention up.
Uh, let's lean into that a little bit, right? Because there's a tendency to think that this compliance work is just purely administrative, forms, deadlines, risk, all that stuff. But it touches people, like real people,
Yeah.
employees, right? Their coverage, their eligibility, their financial security. So, how do you help employers kind of keep the human in the process?
Yeah, absolutely. It does come down to, I think, ultimately what kind of uh, offering are you providing to your employee, and how is that showing the employee that you, the employer, are taking care of them? So, from a ACA standpoint, making sure that the employees that need to be offered benefits are getting offered benefits timely, and it's a good benefit. It's not just here's a benefit for you to enroll in if you want to, but it's pretty expensive and you're not really getting great coverage. It covers everything that the employee needs. And of course, there's regulations around that, right? That employers will still take the risk of, I'm not going to check all the boxes. I'm going to offer the minimum that needs to be offered, but the employees take note of that, and so that's why it's important for that employer to put together a good package. Another way that we help is we have an identity theft protection program what a better way in this time of age to show your employee that you care about them by putting an identity theft protection program in their hands at a very small or no cost at all, that allows them to make sure that them and their families are protected. So it's really key to just kind of, again, we're there to help with putting together this package that makes it a nice kind of process for that employee as they go through the whole life cycle of their employment.
We talk a lot about the the effect that all things like this have on retention, right? Retention is a component of so many different ways that an employer, right, is ultimately going to treat well, I should say, regrettable turnover, right, is usually tied to, X amount of things, right? Laundry list of things that the employer, has going on within inside their organization, and benefits, right? And all of these things that you're talking about make a huge difference, right? When it comes to retention, when it comes to culture. You said, what was the word you just? Employees take note, right? They might not say something right then, but they're constantly, I think, even if it's subconscious, they are constantly evaluating their employer. The same way that employers are constantly evaluating their employees, the reverse is being done. I'm just kind of curious your perspective on how all of the things that you're doing to help employers provide the best experience to their employees, how that ultimately affects retention at the organizations that use Equifax.
Yeah, I think it's part of that evaluation. So what can we do to help the employer get high marks on that employee evaluation that they're processing in their brain, right? And I like the way you put that, of the employees are always kind of going, is this the right employer for me? Do I have the right benefits? Am I in the right role? Do I have a growth trajectory? And I think that, with a lot of our solutions, we're going to really drill down pretty deep into everything that we offer. It really boils down to, are we enabling that employer to be properly evaluated by their employee and with high regards? So are we helping the employer be compliant so that the employee life's easy for the employee on the onboarding process or in their active benefits enrollment? But also, what can we provide to the employer that they can then take to their employees that maybe makes the employee go, oh, they're, this company's thinking about me and what I need in my role in my life to support my family, etc. So that's where we like to be market leaders, thought leaders in what's going to happen a year down the line, 3 years down the line, 5 years down the line. So we've got folks that, are in Washington, making sure, watching what changes are happening with the government. And also, one thing that I'm very passionate about right now is the evolution of healthcare, is this thing called ICHRA, ICHRA, which is an individual contribution health reimbursement account. And it's a new way to look at benefits, where the employee is kind of given the tools to make their own decision on what plans they want to enroll in, based on maybe where they are or what their needs are. And so it's just another way for employers to kind of, put something on the table for the employee where the employee goes, they care about me.
I like that you mentioned, you talk about looking 5 years, 10 years, right? And sort of the evolution. So looking ahead, the regulatory environment around this has a lot of moving parts, right? What do employers need to be watching right now? Any changes or shifts on the horizon that organizations need to be preparing for? I mean, I understand that it's very difficult to predict sometimes what's going on in Washington. So, without getting into the political landscape, like what do employers need to be paying attention to that might be coming down the pike?
Yeah, I don't know if I have the right answer for that right now. Really, because to your point, there's a lot of movement going on. There's a lot of changes. I think what they need, what employers need to be thinking about is what compliance pieces do I need to be focused on in order to have the least amount of disruption within my organization. So what are the things that are being really reviewed and scrutinized right now that 2, 3, 5 years from now are still going to be heavily scrutinized? And to me, it really focuses on the onboarding as well as just the active employees getting the right benefits. And I think as long as they have their pulse on that, they'll be prepared for any changes that come up. And two, not to sound, too cheesy, I guess, but having that subject matter expert to kind of monitor Washington for you, to go, hey, we heard this, and this is the path this could lead us to. So let's make sure that we're prepared for it. Is really kind of the most important part, in my opinion, right now.
Yeah, because what leaders are what SMB leaders are spending the majority of their time with their eyes on Washington? Probably not many, right? They have so many other things to worry about. How do you see the tools and the tech in the space evolving? Like, what will ACA management look like in 5 years for a well-run HR team?
Yeah. Well, I think that for a well-run HR team, they're going to be leveraging, of course, AI, whether that be their own AI tool or an outsourced tool. And I think that I'm not, just to kind of preface, I'm not fully, I guess, ready for how the technology is going to change the ACA management. I think that it will make it a little easier over time, but there's still a lot that we need to learn of how it can support just managing the benefits, managing the compliance, monitoring those hours month over month. But I do think that in 3-5 years that we will have it figured out to make things more efficient, both for us as a company that has a technology that's out in front of an employer, but also for the employer that's kind of managing that day-to-day process.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty incredible. It's going to work its way into all AI is going to work its way into all parts of HR tech, and it's probably going to have an outsized influence in some areas, and maybe not as significant in others. But it's probably going to be in everything.
It's gonna be touching everything at some level. I would agree. Just I think there's a lot of people that are still unsure of what level of degree. So.
A lot of people are, and so and I think that as teams start to use it, right, you're also finding that there's a lot of folks within those teams who are reticent, right, or who have not adopted it or are comfortable with it at the level that that they should be or that they could be, right? And it's the AI itself is not fully mature, right? So it's able to handle and take over a lot of different things. Other things probably still require enormous amount of human judgment. What about compliance specifically? A role it might play in specifically in this compliance. Any thoughts?
I think what role AI will play. I do think that AI can be helpful in bringing in data and quickly notifying you where there are risks, and that is definitely something that I'm looking to figure out how can we bring this tool in so that we can help from a compliance standpoint for something to just quickly tell us where do we have the risk, and what is that? Are we teetering on that line of I guess ultimately, are we going to get that call from the IRS or not? I think that's I think that's how it can benefit. But I know we talked about change earlier, kind of that, that I don't want to say fear of change, but unwillingness to, hey, we're doing this process now. And I think that's where a lot of people are with AI, probably myself included, is just, I don't know where it's going to fit in. So maybe I'm a little hesitant of it, but I'm definitely interested in learning how it can help.
I have a question here. So as we wrap up, this is kind of one of my favorite things to close on, is this idea of, if an HR professional, business leader, an owner or operator, came up to you and said, Todd, I know our ACA process is a complete mess, but I don't even know where to start.
Mm-hmm.
You're on an elevator, you have a minute until you're at the top floor and the doors open and this person flies right out the door. What's that single most important piece of advice besides call Equifax do you give them?
Yeah, it's very quickly, if I have a minute, it's as an employer, you have an obligation to align to the regulation that is the ACA.
Yeah.
Keep the IRS off of your back. Don't let them know who you are. Fix the challenges that you have right now to make sure that you're compliant going forward. And call Equifax. Yeah, that's
Love it.
That's pretty much it. That would be my quick statement as someone is rushing off of an elevator.
I appreciate you, Todd. This was a lot of fun. Thank you. Thanks for joining me today.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And it was a great conversation.
It was fun. And a big thanks to all you watching and listening to MustardHub Voices Behind the Build. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Please visit mustardhub.com to learn more about MustardHub and discover how we help companies become destinations for workplace happiness and turn culture into a competitive edge. Until next time.